Welcome, everyone. To today's deep dive, we're tackling essentialism. We've got some really fascinating excerpts from Greg McKeown's book, you know, Essentialism, the Disciplined Pursuit of Less. And I'm really looking forward to unpacking this with you. It's not just about, being more productive. It's about figuring out what truly matters and making those conscious choices about how we use our time.
You've hit the nail on the head. It's that disciplined pursuit of less that McKeown emphasizes. That conscious effort to elevate the vital few above the trivial many.
He illustrates this point with some really captivating stories like that executive who totally transformed his work by mastering the art of saying no. Initially he only declined requests when he was completely swamped,
Yeah.
but over time he started applying a stricter criteria, asking himself, is this the absolute most important thing I could be working on right now?
It's incredible how that shift in mindset changed things. He basically decluttered his schedule, creating space for deeper focus. And guess what? He ended up producing work of a much higher quality. Even his colleagues, instead of being annoyed, they started to really respect his decisiveness.
It's a powerful reminder that saying no can be a gateway to greater effectiveness and even earn you admiration. McKeown connects this to a design principle, less but better, coined by Dieter Rams. It's about making those intentional choices, focusing our limited resources where they'll make the most impact.
This idea of less leading to better, it really strikes a chord, doesn't it? But McKeown also reviews his own struggles with saying yes when he knew he should have said no. He shares that story of being stuck at a client meeting while desperately wanting to be with his wife and newborn child. It was that surrender to external pressure that led to this deep sense of regret.
We've all been there, haven't we? Prioritizing others' needs at the expense of our own values and relationships. It's striking how open McKeown is in sharing this experience.
And he brilliantly connects it to a broader phenomenon, the paradox of success. Success often brings a flood of commitments and opportunities pulling us in every direction. He mentions Jim Collins' observation about the undisciplined pursuit of more being a major reason for failure for both individuals and companies.
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We might be passing up truly fulfilling opportunities simply because we're caught up in this whirlwind of activities that don't align with our core purpose.
Precisely. Every yes we utter represents a trade-off, and often we're making these trade-offs by default, not by design. McKeown's own life provides a compelling example of this. He shares the story of dropping out of law school midway after realizing he had simply fallen into it, not actively chosen it.
This realization seems like a real turning point in his journey. It emphasizes that even when we don't have control over our options, we still have the power to choose how we respond.
That decision to quit law school really highlights the liberating power of choice. It also prompts us to consider how many of us are living out scripts we haven't consciously chosen.
It's a thought-provoking question for sure. What about those situations where we feel trapped by circumstances? McKeown dives into the concept of learned helplessness, where repeated setbacks can make us believe that our efforts are pointless.
He observes two common reactions to this feeling. One is checking out, basically giving up. The other is becoming hyperactive, frantically trying to prove ourselves by taking on everything.
Both responses stem from this perceived lack of control, don't they? We either think our actions don't matter or we try to do it all because we're afraid to say no.
Absolutely. And both perpetuate a cycle of reacting to external pressures instead of actively shaping our lives. So how do we break free from this reactive mode? Well, McKeown introduces the Pareto principle, also known as the 80-20 rule, which suggests that roughly 80% of our results come from just 20% of our efforts.
It's a powerful reminder that not all activities are created equal. He uses Warren Buffett as an example, attributing his success to focusing on a select few investments. This principle translates directly to our own lives. It's about identifying that crucial 20% and putting our energy there.
The real challenge lies in distinguishing the vital few from the trivial many. McKeown stresses the importance of investing time up front to carefully explore options and make deliberate choices. He advocates for becoming strategic investors in our own lives, wisely allocating resources for maximum return.
This leads us to another crucial aspect of essentialism, accepting trade-offs. He illustrates this with the story of Johnson & Johnson's response to the Tylenol cyanide scandal.
They faced a potential financial disaster, but they put customer safety first, guided by their credo that prioritized customers over shareholders. It's a compelling example of how clearly defined values can help us navigate tough trade-offs when the stakes are high.
They chose principle over immediate profit, a decision that ultimately strengthened their brand in the long run. McKeown contrasts this with the Concord project, which kept receiving funding despite its economic failings. It illustrates what's called the sunk cost bias, holding on to past investments even when they no longer serve us.
It's a trap that can keep us tethered to the non-essential, draining our energy and resources. Essentialism encourages us to recognize our limitations and make conscious choices about what we're willing to sacrifice.
This brings up an interesting point. Sometimes the most valuable thing we can do is nothing at all. McKeown emphasizes the importance of carving out time for thinking, especially in our hyper-connected world. He mentions LinkedIn CEO Jeff Weiner, who blocks out up to 2 hours of blank space on his calendar every day.
At first, Wiener saw it as an indulgence, but he discovered it was his most valuable productivity tool. This dedicated thinking time allows him to step back, reflect, and focus on the bigger picture.
It's like pressing pause on the constant barrage of demands, giving our minds space to breathe and process. Could we compare this to the Think Weeks popularized by Bill Gates, where dedicated time is set aside for reading, reflection, and strategizing?
Absolutely. Even if we can't take a whole week, we can incorporate mini think weeks into our daily routines, maybe swap scrolling through news feeds for a few pages of an inspiring book.
Even small changes in our routines can create space for deeper thought and reconnect us with what truly matters. McKeown even suggests we become journalists of our own lives, not literally, of course, but by adopting some of the skills journalists use to filter through the noise and find the real story.
He uses this powerful analogy: the Eastern Airlines Flight 401 crash. The crew was fixated on a minor issue with the landing gear and completely overlooked a critical problem, their altitude, leading to a tragic outcome.
So it's about training ourselves to see the broader context, connecting the dots, and identifying the essential issues amidst all the distraction.
Exactly. McKeown suggests some practical techniques for tapping into that inner journalist, keeping a journal to track patterns and insights, observing unusual details that might signal something deeper, asking powerful questions to get to the heart of the matter. He advocates for turning everyday experiences into opportunities for learning and growth.
It's about cultivating curiosity, becoming more observant, and seeking understanding in the everyday. And speaking of curiosity, McKeown brings up a concept we often associate with childhood play. He argues that it's not just a frivolous pastime, but a vital activity for adults too.
He cites research by Stuart Brown suggesting that play is crucial for brain plasticity, adaptability, and creativity. Brown even found a link between a lack of play and diminished problem-solving skills.
This really challenges the idea that relentlessly pursuing productivity is always beneficial. Could it be that this obsession actually hinders our ability to truly innovate?
The beauty of play is its freedom from outcome-driven pressure. It allows us to reconnect with that innate curiosity, break down barriers between ideas, and stumble upon unexpected insights.
It's about giving ourselves permission to be a bit whimsical, to experiment and have fun with ideas.
And in doing so, we might unlock a whole new level of creative potential. But let's not get so carried away with exploration that we neglect our most valuable asset, ourselves. McKeown shares a cautionary tale about Jeff, a high achiever who pushed himself to the point of burnout.
Jeff's story is a crucial reminder that we need to be strategic not only with our time, but also with our well-being. His relentless pursuit of external achievements led him to neglect his health, which ultimately hindered his ability to contribute effectively.
And a key element of self-care, as McKeown emphasizes, is prioritizing sleep. He debunks the myth that less sleep equals greater achievement, citing research that proves the opposite. He even mentions the 10,000-hour rule study of violinists, where top performers not only practiced more, but also slept more than their peers, averaging 8.6 hours per night.
So getting enough sleep isn't about being lazy. It's about optimizing our potential.
Precisely. Sleep is fundamental for cognitive function, creativity, and sound decision-making. It's a key component of sustainable high performance.
We've talked about the power of saying no, the pitfalls of chasing the non-essential, the importance of conscious choice, and the need to safeguard our well-being. But how do we put these principles into action? McKeown offers some practical tools, one of the most impactful being his 90% rule for decision-making. If something doesn't score at least a 9 out of 10 on our priority scale, it should be a no.
It's about setting a high bar for our commitments, resisting the temptation to say yes to mediocre opportunities. He uses the example of Basecamp's hiring process, where they look for an absolute natural fit and are willing to turn down good candidates who aren't a perfect match.
They recognize that every commitment dilutes focus and maintain discipline in sticking to their criteria. This brings us to another key aspect of the essentialism, eliminating the non-essential.
This can seem daunting, but McKeown offers a helpful analogy: decluttering a closet. We often hold on to clothes we rarely wear because of sentimental value or the fear of needing them someday.
But he poses a brilliant question. If I didn't already own this, how much would I pay to buy it? This helps us detach from those non-essential items and see them for what they are, clutter.
We can apply the same principle to our commitments. Ask yourself, if I didn't already have this opportunity, how much effort would I put into acquiring it?
That forces us to confront the true value of our commitments and make tough decisions about what to let go of.
It's about recognizing that every commitment we hold on to prevents us from fully investing in what truly matters. McKeown emphasizes that eliminating the non-essential isn't a one-time purge. It's an ongoing process of continually evaluating our commitments and having the courage to say no to anything that doesn't serve our highest purpose.
He offers different strategies for gracefully declining, from clearly stating our boundaries up front to proposing alternative solutions or suggesting someone better suited for the task. It's about respecting others' needs while firmly upholding our own commitments.
Remember, a clear no is often more respectful than a vague or non-committal yes. It empowers others to move forward and find solutions that genuinely work for them.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into essentialism, exploring thought-provoking concepts and practical strategies. It feels like we've only just scratched the surface.
There's so much more to uncover, from designing environments that support essential goals to creating systems for effortless execution. The journey of essentialism continues. Let's take a moment to absorb what we've discussed and come back soon to delve deeper into the power of living an intentional life.
Eliminating the non-essential can feel pretty overwhelming at times.
Yeah.
It can.
Yeah.
But McKeown offers this analogy. Imagine editing a film. A skilled editor removes all the extraneous footage, keeping only those scenes that really drive the narrative forward.
It makes the whole experience so much better, doesn't it? No wasted scenes, just pure storytelling gold. And it's this magic of editing that McKeown wants us to apply to our lives. He provides a ton of practical tips for becoming masterful editors of our own experiences.
So how do we tap into our inner Scorsese?
Well, it starts with setting those firm boundaries. McKeown tells this story about Jin Young, an employee in Korea who is planning her wedding while also preparing for a big board meeting. Despite her already packed schedule, her manager just kept piling on more work.
A scenario that I'm sure many of us can relate to, unfortunately.
Right. So Jin Young decides she's had enough. When her manager asks her to take on yet another project, she simply says no. No apologies, no justifications, just a clear and unwavering boundary.
That takes a lot of courage.
It does. But what's really remarkable is how Jin Young's no had this ripple effect. The rest of the team started saying no too, which forced the manager to confront her own unrealistic expectations. And in the end, it led to a more balanced and productive work environment for everyone.
So setting boundaries can actually benefit everyone involved.
Absolutely. It clarifies expectations, prevents burnout, and allows individuals to really focus on their most significant contributions.
Yeah.
McKeown also shares the story of Clayton Christensen, that renowned Harvard Business School professor who famously refused to work on weekends. He wanted to prioritize time with his family.
And he stuck to this boundary even when a senior partner tried to pressure him.
Exactly. Christensen recognized that compromising his boundaries once would set a dangerous precedent and ultimately undermine his core values.
It's a powerful reminder that our time is our most precious resource, and we have the right to protect it.
But setting boundaries isn't just about saying no to others. It's also about saying no to ourselves. We need to be aware of that sunk cost bias where we cling to past investments even when they're no longer serving us.
It's like pouring more money into a failing business or staying in a relationship that's clearly run its course.
Precisely. McKeown uses the example of the Concorde supersonic jet, a project that just kept going despite being an economic disaster.
Because no one wanted to admit defeat and cut their losses.
Exactly. That sunk cost bias can be a powerful force. It blinds us to better alternatives and keeps us chained to the non-essential. True essentialists have the courage to walk away even when it means admitting they made a mistake.
So we're setting boundaries, cutting our losses, but life is unpredictable. How do we make room for those inevitable curveballs?
McKeown suggests building in buffers, those strategic reserves of time and resources that allow us to navigate unexpected challenges without completely derailing our progress.
Like that emergency fund we all know we should have, but rarely prioritize.
Exactly. McKeown compares it to driving. If you're tailgating at high speed, any sudden move by the car in front could lead to disaster. But if you create a safe distance, a buffer, you have more time to react and avoid a collision.
So it's about anticipating the unexpected and giving ourselves some wiggle room.
He recommends adding 50% to our time estimates for tasks and projects because things almost always take longer than we think.
That might explain why I'm always running late.
He also suggests scenario planning, asking ourselves, what's the worst that could happen and how can I prepare for it? This helps us identify potential roadblocks and come up with strategies to overcome them.
Okay, we're creating buffers, anticipating obstacles, but how do we actually get things done?
McKeown introduces this concept of the slowest hiker, borrowed from Eliyahu Goldratt's theory of constraints. The idea is that any system's strength is limited by its weakest link.
Like that one person in a group project who always slows everyone down.
Exactly. Instead of trying to improve everything at once, McKeown suggests focusing on identifying and addressing that biggest bottleneck, the slowest hiker, in our process.
So it's about strategically directing our efforts, focusing on the areas that will yield the greatest results.
He gives the example of the Richmond Police Department. They implemented this positive tickets program where they focused on rewarding good behavior instead of just punishing bad behavior.
A more proactive approach rather than simply reacting to problems.
Precisely. And the results were amazing. Recidivism rates dropped significantly. It shows the power of focusing on those essential levers for change.
All right, so bottlenecks addressed. What's next?
Now it's time to build momentum by focusing on small wins. McKeown highlights the power of progress. Research shows that even those small, concrete achievements can really boost our motivation and increase our belief in our ability to succeed.
It's like that feeling you get when you finally check something off your to-do list.
Exactly. It creates a positive feedback loop that inspires us to keep moving forward. He suggests breaking down those big goals into smaller, more manageable steps and celebrating our progress along the way.
So instead of getting overwhelmed by the enormity of a task, we focus on making incremental progress.
Precisely. It's about shifting our mindset from overwhelm to empowerment, recognizing that every small win brings us closer to our ultimate goal.
Starting to see how all these pieces fit together. We're eliminating distractions, clarifying our goals, building in buffers, addressing obstacles, and focusing on progress. But how do we maintain this focus amidst the chaos of everyday life?
McKeown stresses the importance of routine. He shares the story of Olympic swimmer Michael Phelps, who followed the same meticulous routine before every race, from his warm-up exercises to his mental visualization techniques.
So routine isn't just mindless repetition. It's about establishing a structure that supports our essential goals.
Exactly. Phelps's routine allowed him to perform at his peak by minimizing distractions and automating many of the mental and physical processes needed for success.
It frees up mental bandwidth for the task at hand.
Precisely. McKeown also suggests identifying our hardest task and tackling it first thing in the morning when our willpower and energy levels are at their highest.
I'm not sure I have the willpower to face my inbox first thing in the morning.
It doesn't have to be email. The key is to figure out which task requires the most focus and discipline and then prioritize it. McKeown also reminds us that routines don't have to be rigid or boring. We can experiment, mix things up, and see what works best for
It's
us.
about finding a rhythm that supports our essential goals while also honoring our individual needs and preferences.
Exactly. It's about creating a structure that empowers us to perform at our best.
Okay, routines established. How do we stay laser-focused in the present moment?
McHugh emphasizes the importance of asking ourselves, what's important now? He shares the story of Larry Gelwicks, a legendary rugby coach who used this question to guide his team to victory.
So it's about staying present, not dwelling on the past or worrying about the future.
Precisely. It's about bringing our full attention and energy to the task at hand, whether it's writing a report, having a conversation, or simply enjoying a meal. McKeown also debunks the myth of multitasking. He argues that it actually makes us less effective by dividing our attention.
I have to admit, I'm guilty of trying to do too many things at once.
Most of us are. But McKeown proposes that instead of multitasking, we practice multifocusing, where we consciously choose one essential task and give it our undivided attention.
So it's about being intentional with our focus,
Yeah.
choosing quality over quantity.
Exactly. It's recognizing that our energy and attention are limited resources, and by using them strategically, we can accomplish so much more.
McKeown also talks about the importance of pausing to refresh, a concept that really resonated with me. He tells the story of an executive who realized he was bringing the stress of work home every night, unable to truly disconnect.
It's such a common experience in our always-on world. McKeown suggests incorporating regular pauses throughout the day. Even short breaks of a few minutes can help us clear our heads, regain perspective, and return to our work feeling refreshed.
It's like hitting the reset button on our mental and emotional state.
Exactly. And these pauses don't have to be anything fancy. A few minutes of meditation, a walk in nature, or even just listening to some music can make a huge difference.
So we're pausing to refresh, focusing on what's important now, embracing routine and building in buffers. It seems like all these principles can really help us cultivate a more intentional and fulfilling life. But before we move on to your final thoughts, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yes, there is one last point I want to touch on before you wrap up this part of our exploration. McKeown talks about the importance of playing to our strengths. He suggests that instead of trying to be good at everything, we should focus on developing our unique talents and abilities.
This reminds me of the idea of finding your zone of genius, that area where you naturally excel and experience flow.
Exactly. It's about identifying those activities that energize us and where we can make the biggest contribution. McKeown encourages us to delegate or eliminate tasks that drain our energy or fall outside our areas of expertise.
So it's not about becoming a jack of all trades, but about mastering those skills and activities that align with our natural strengths.
Precisely. By focusing on our strengths, we can achieve better results, experience more fulfillment, and make a more meaningful impact.
As we wrap up this deep dive into essentialism, what's really stuck with you from our conversation so far?
You know what really stands out for me is that idea that essentialism goes beyond just productivity or time management. It's more like a philosophy, a whole approach to life that's rooted in intention and purpose.
Yeah, it's a real shift in perspective, isn't it? McKeown encourages us to move from that I have to mentality to an I choose to outlook, taking back control and directing our energy towards things that truly resonate with our values.
It is incredibly empowering to recognize that we do have the power to shape our own lives, even amidst all the external pressures and expectations.
Yeah.
And the sense of empowerment also extends to our relationships. McKean talks about the importance of nurturing essential relationships.
Those connections that nourish us, support our growth, and contribute to our overall well-being. Kind of like that saying, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Being around people who drain our energy or pull us away from our purpose makes it that much harder to live an essential life.
Exactly. Essential relationships should inspire us, challenge us, and support us in becoming the best versions of ourselves. And building these connections takes effort. We need to be intentional about who we spend our time with and how we nurture those bonds.
McKeown suggests paying attention to the emotional residue certain relationships leave behind. Like, do we feel energized and inspired after spending time with someone, or drained and depleted? It's a good indicator of which relationships deserve our focus.
Absolutely. It's about making conscious decisions about who we let into our inner circle. And this idea of conscious choice applies to every area of our lives, our work, our hobbies, our commitments. McKeown proposes creating a personal essential intent, a concise statement that captures our core purpose and guides our decision-making.
He offers this framework for figuring out this intent, encouraging us to explore our passions, our talents, and the needs of the world around us. It's like writing a mission statement for our lives, a guiding principle that helps us stay focused on what truly matters.
And once we have that clear intent, we can use it as a filter for our choices. Ask yourself, does this activity or commitment align with my essential intent? If not, it might be time to let it go.
Letting go can be incredibly freeing. It opens up space for new possibilities and lets us invest our energy in things that truly excite us. McKeown reminds us that we simply can't do it all, and that's perfectly okay.
It's by embracing our limitations that we actually unlock our greatest potential. By focusing on a few carefully chosen areas, we can achieve extraordinary results.
So, essentialism isn't about deprivation or self-denial. It's about aligning our choices with our deepest values to create a life that's both meaningful and fulfilling.
And it's important to remember that this is a journey. It's ongoing. We're going to slip back into old patterns sometimes or get swept up in the demands of the non-essential. The key is to keep coming back to our essential intent, making those adjustments, and refining our choices.
It's about embracing the process, learning from our experiences, and continuing to grow.
Exactly. Essentialism is not a destination, it's a way of traveling. It's a lifelong pursuit of living with intention, purpose, and joy.
As we wrap up this deep dive, can you share a key takeaway, a little nugget of wisdom for our listeners?
I would say essentialism is not about getting more done. It's about getting the right things done. It's about making deliberate choices, eliminating distractions, and focusing our energy on what truly matters. It's about designing a life that reflects our deepest values and allows us to make a real contribution to the world.
Beautifully said. To our listeners, we encourage you to explore this path. Start small experiment and discover the power of essentialism in your own lives. Now, before we sign off, let's try to distill the essence of essentialism into a concise 10-point summary. Ready?
Absolutely. I'm happy to walk us through those key takeaways.
Great. Let's do it.
Number 1, embrace the power of no. Learn to decline requests that don't align with your essential goals.
Number 2, identify and eliminate the non-essential. Constantly evaluate your commitments and let go of anything that doesn't serve your highest purpose.
Number 3, focus on the vital few. The Pareto principle tells us that 20% of our efforts produce 80% of our results. So concentrate your energy on those activities that make the biggest impact.
Number 4, accept trade-offs. You can't do it all. Make conscious choices about what you're willing to give up to pursue what truly matters.
Number 5, create space for thinking. Schedule regular time for reflection and strategizing. Step away from the daily grind and reconnect with your core purpose.
Number 6, become a journalist of your own life. Pay attention to patterns, ask powerful questions, and seek understanding in your everyday experiences.
Number 7, don't forget the importance of play. Make time for activities that bring you joy, spark your creativity, and encourage exploration.
Number 8, protect your most valuable asset, yourself. Prioritize sleep, self-care, and activities that replenish your energy.
Number 9, design routines that support your essential goals. Automate decisions, eliminate distractions, and create structure for effortless execution.
And finally, number 10, focus on what's important now. Stay present, avoid multitasking, and bring your full attention to the task at hand.
And there you have it, 10 powerful principles to guide you on your journey towards a more intentional and fulfilling life.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into essentialism. Until next time, keep seeking, keep learning, and keep diving deep.